Alright guys, today I'm going to be bringing you guys a little tutorial for beginners on how to completely disassemble your Airsoft AEG M4. A lot of people have been asking me to do this, and since I finally got this Umbrella Armory Tech Mat for Christmas, I'm going to do that for you guys. Also, I got some nice little multi-bit screwdrivers or whatever, which I've always wanted. I have the Allen keys and whatever, and then I have like all these bits that work for the screwdriver, so now I don't have to worry about grabbing up here all these screwdrivers that I have and laying them all over the place. A lot more organized this way. I like being organized. So like I said, we're going to be taking apart this entire M4 from the receivers to the gearbox, going all the way down, taking all the parts out of the gearbox, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So first of all, what I like to do is just, of course, removing the upper receiver. Most upper receiver pins are just push out like this. You get a little pin, push it out, the pin falls out. Most of the time it'll be a retention, whatever, I don't know. That's a word for it, but it'll stick out basically and just stay in the gearbox. Like, it'll stay in there, it won't come out. So if you pull on it and it's not coming out, leave it there, it's supposed to stay in there. And other times you'll have to have an Allen key, like in this case, this one, to remove the screw first and then pop out the pin. So that's the first step. Then we just pull the charging handle back a little bit and pick it up a little, because right on top of the gearbox there's a little bump right there, which the gearbox with the charging handle will get caught on, and you basically just take that off. And then here's your upper receiver. I won't talk about hop-ups in this video, so I'm just going to set this aside just so it's not in my way. Alright, now we have the upper receiver off of the gun. The second thing I like to do is take the buffer tube and stock off. Oh god. Don't worry about all this. I had to solder some wires because they came undone, which was not Lancer's fault. It was my fault, because I put a tiny stock on here and it was super hard to get batteries on, and I just forced them on there. So we got the stock off. Pretty sure most of you guys know how to take your stock off. Alright, and then for this bit you're going to need a long screwdriver. There's a screw in the bottom of the buffer tube. You just stick down there. It's kind of hard to get it the first time. And you're just going to unscrew that screw. Then once you have it unscrewed, you're just going to wiggle your buffer tube off, which takes a little time. And there's going to be a little... You got the screw, and then there's going to be, most of the time, a little thing like this, which is, the screw will go in right here, and it's got a little cut right there so your wires don't get squished or whatever, so it's a little hole for the wires. Then you just feed your wires through, then you get your sling plate off, put all those things to the side. And then here we have the gearbox in the lower receiver. Next, I like to take the grip off, which I just need a tiny little screwdriver. Alright, now you got the two screws from the bottom of the motor plate off. You're gonna just... Sometimes it's hard to get them out just by pulling them out. Pull the motor plate off. I'm going to set that to the side right here. Actually, no, over here. And then you got your motor and your motor wires. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get in there with your fingers, so I just get pliers. And oh, that happens all the time. Then I just pull the wires off, but be careful. Just unplug the wires. Pull your motor out, and sometimes, in this case, the little spring falls off, but this spring is what keeps the motor tight inside the gearbox, inside the motor grip, so you don't want to lose that. But yeah, like I said, so most of the times these will just stay on there. Other times they'll just fall off, but make sure when you're putting it back in that it stays on, because you don't want to lose that, because that's like the most important part. Then next you are going to unscrew the grip. Probably won't be able to see it, but there are 2 screws in the bottom. Just unscrew them. Take your motor off. There's little holes where the wires come through. Don't lose the screws to the motor or pistol grip. Sorry. Just gonna put these up there. Very convenient little holes up there to hold your screws. Now we have the lower receiver. Grip is off, and next we're going to remove the rear pin, the floor pin, and the mag release. So first I like to remove the floor pin. Doesn't really matter which order you go in, but I just remove the floor pin first. Your floor pin on one side, let me get closer. So on one side of your floor pin it's going to have these little ridges. On the other side it's going to be smooth. When you pop it out, make sure that this part comes out first. So you're going to push it out of the receiver like this, and then it'll just fly right out. If you push it out this way, it's going to be super hard to come out, and you're probably going to ruin the floor pin. Alright, next is the rear pin, which is kind of hard sometimes. Just going to pop it out. Next, we're going to flip it over. Now, in this case, we don't have a ambidextrous mag release or ambidextrous selector switch. So this is relatively simple compared to ones that have a ambi selector and mag release. You're just going to remove the little screw. Sorry if you guys can hear some barking. My dog is going crazy right now. Just pull that out. You got your 3 parts right here. And I'll show you guys how to put them back in at the end after this. Spring, you've got this little plate here. You got the actual button itself with the screw. Don't lose that. Then next you can just slide it right out. Basically you're gonna pull up like that and then pull out. And here's your lower receiver. Throw it right there. And there is your gearbox. Alright, so now we have it broken down into the gearbox itself. Now, before removing these screws from your gearbox, if you have a quick change spring, you get an Allen key, put it in here, twist it, pull the spring out. If you don't have a quick change spring, what you're going to do is take a little pin like this or a flathead screwdriver or whatever fits in there. Just stick it in there, and I put my finger in here, holds the spring down, because if you were to not have that in and just peel it out, the spring will fly out and all your gears will get messed up. You'll lose your shims and everything. It'll ruin everything. So keep that in there. Keep it pointed down. Keep your finger over the spring so it stays down. Take your gearbox off, and then you push your spring in carefully, and then pull it out slowly, and then put it to the side. However, I have a quick change spring, so I'm just going to remove that, which is very simple. I will show you guys how to do that. Just get your Allen key, stick it in, push in slightly, twist, and this Allen key is a little bit too big, and then you just pop it out. And here's your spring guide right here. Now, these 2 pegs, there's one right there and one right there, line up with the holes right there and right there. So that's how you would take it out. We got that popping out. And then, fair warning when you're putting your spring back, for some springs you're going to have tight coils on one end and loose coils like this on one end. What you're going to do is put the tight coils in the back. Trust me on that. I'm not exactly sure why you would do that, but I've heard from people that that's what you do. Tight coils in the back, regular coils like this in the front. So that's all you gotta do. And now we can start removing the gearbox. Now that we have all the screws removed from the upper and the edges of the gearbox, we can now remove the upper shell. Just peel it over. Now, one thing that annoys me, which happens most of the time, is the bearings will fall out of the top of the gearbox when I take it apart. So I'll just put them back up there for now, for the time being. So here's your gearbox. You've got the cylinder, piston. I'll just take everything out actually. First thing that I like to do when I'm taking apart the gearbox is take out the tappet plate and cylinder compression setup. Take that out, set it up there. Next I'll take out the gears, and I'll go over which gears are which. Sometimes I forget with certain gears. Make sure you don't lose your shims, for those that are wondering what shims are, especially if you have a stock gearbox. Shims are these little washers right here that are on your gears. That's what keeps the gearbox nice and sounding good, and the gears aren't screechy or anything. Just keeps everything sounding nice. Alright, so here's your gearbox completely cleaned out. So in this case, we have a MOSFET and electronic trigger unit. This looks a little bit different than your standard trigger contacts for other AEGs. So sadly I can't show you guys that. But this is basically it, with no gears, no piston, no compression setup. The only thing in here is the trigger board and the safety latch right here, which I'll get into putting that back on. So you leave that on, you don't have to worry about taking that apart. Now for your wiring, which is kind of annoying to me sometimes. They've got grooves in the gearbox right here where you can feed the wires through, and that's just where you got to keep them, so they don't touch any of the gears and strip out and get ruined. So when you are putting your, I'll go over the parts actually. So first up we have the piston. This is what brings the air into the cylinder, which pushes the air out of the nozzle and makes the BB go. Here's the cylinder and cylinder head. Cylinder. This is a ported cylinder, which means it has a hole on the side. And this is the nozzle. This is the stock Electric Tactical nozzle. It's plastic, which is decent. I'm actually going to swap that out for my APS aluminum nozzle really quickly. Alright, here's the aluminum nozzle right here. Just gets you a little bit of a better air seal. So you can see it's a actual circle. On this one it's got like a little star shape, which doesn't get you a very good air seal, but this one has an O-ring in it, so gets a good air seal. It's perfect. Also looks nice. So that's that. Here's your tappet plate. Now what the tappet plate does is the nozzle goes in the front here, and the sector gear will pull this back, and then it'll spring back forward, pushing the nozzle into the hop-up chamber, shooting the BB out. And then here's the tappet plate spring, which hooks onto this pin up here in the gearbox, which I'll show you how to put that back together in a second. And then on the gears, this is your sector gear with a sector delayer chip on it. Sector gear right here. Now you guys are probably familiar with dual sector gears, which is basically, it's not the full way around, but it'll be teeth up here and then teeth down here and then empty space in the middle. So that's the sector gear. And then this is the bevel gear, which is what goes in the bottom of the gearbox. This is the first point of contact in the gearbox, so it'll be the first one to move other than the pinion gear on your motor. So that is the bevel gear. Then here's the spur gear, which is like the biggest one. Sits up here, and yeah, basically there's nothing really specific about the gears or whatever. Don't want to lose that shim. Alright, so now we are going to, forgot one more part. This is your cutoff, no, what is this thing called? AR latch, anti-reversal latch, or AR latch. So this thing goes right here, and it basically keeps the gearbox from spinning backwards. I think it keeps the gears from spinning the wrong way. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Then your trigger, nothing else really. Alright, so the first thing you do when you're putting your gearbox back together is putting in your spur gear. Very nice. Yeah. And then you're going to put in your AR latch. Now, when you put in your AR latch, it goes into the hole right there. Make sure, let me show you guys actually. So there's an AR latch spring, right? So there's a little spring for the AR latch that, I gotta find it. There you go. That little spring right there is what keeps it, keeps tension on the bevel gear so that it does not spin backwards. So we're going to put the AR latch in. It's just going to sit like that for now. Sorry if you can't see it that well. It's kind of hard to do this. And then next you're going to put in your bevel gear. Now when you're putting in your bevel gear, you want to make sure your AR latch is pulled backwards like that. Then you slide in just like that. It's kind of difficult to do it the first time if you're a beginner, but it shouldn't be a big deal. Putting that in there so it keeps the AR latch in place. Next I'm going to put in the trigger. So here's your trigger right here, and then here's the trigger spring. Not going to be in focus, but oh well. The back of the trigger, there's a little hole which you put a little pin inside, and it looks like that. There we go. And this pin sticks out. What you're going to do is push the metal piece, a little metal pin, right, that's a part of the trigger right there, against the gearbox where the safety latch is, and then you're going to find the hole for the trigger, pull it backwards, then it should just sit right in there. Then next I'm going to grab my trigger holder, because this also pops out all the time. Alright, and then next I'm going to put in the sector gear, which is the final gear in the drivetrain. Alright, so there we go, and then you should be able to spin the gears freely if you hold down the AR latch. It's kind of hard to show you guys because of the camera angle. You hear that clicking? That's the AR latch hitting the spur gear, or bevel gear, sorry. Alright, next we're going to put the compression parts back in. So what you're going to do first, tappet plate, put the nozzle on the tappet plate. It's got little grooves in it, which you just put it in. Make sure your spring is on, then you're going to put it in here. Now, make sure when you're putting your compression setup back in that the piston teeth are aiming down towards the sector gear. And what I like to do is make sure the teeth of the sector gear are facing downwards. It's just what you do. Then you're going to put your spring on, the tappet plate. Alright, and then you're going to, on the side of the piston, there's these little tracks right here, which line up with little tracks on the gearbox itself. So make sure those line up. And same for on the cylinder head, there's little holes. Those line up with little pins inside the gearbox. For example, on this side, there's a little pin right there, which lines up with the hole on the cylinder head. Then next is a little bit tricky, and it kind of annoys me all the time. We're going to put the tappet plate spring. I use a pin to, like if you guys just saw right there, put the pin in the hole of the spring, lift it up, and put it over the pin in the gearbox. Now this is the annoying part that I'm talking about that I always get messed up on. Is the tappet plate will go like that and it'll pull my shims off. So what I do before I put the gearbox back on, the other half of the gearbox back on, is I'll keep that pin in there like that, and then when I'm putting the things are going to fall out. When I'm putting this back on, I just keep that in there so the tappet plate stays out of the way. Alright, so now that we have everything back in the gearbox, all the gears, the compression parts, we can put the top half of the gearbox back on. Now, sometimes you're going to have to, let me remove these because I don't need them anymore. Make sure your safety latch is inside, nice and good. Make sure the AR latch is in the right hole. There we go. We back in. Alright. Like I said, it takes a little bit of practice to get that in. Just making sure the holes, the pins line up inside the holes. It's a little bit difficult for first timers, but if you have a broken gun laying around, just practice on that. And now we can install the screws back into the outside of the gearbox, and then we will start on to the next part. Alright guys, I'm going to try and keep this quick because my camera's about to die. Now that we have all our screws back in the gearbox, we can put the quick change spring back in, and then put the gearbox back in the reassembly. Alright, so this is a little bit of a tricky part. So what you're going to do for the mag release, take this part, put it in on this side first, flip it over, take the spring, put it on there, put that on there, and then just screw her on. Oh shit. She's working good. Let me put the floor pin back in because it's stupid. Floor pin is really annoying. But anyway, there we go. Now we're going to put the grip back on. And then we're good to go. Alright, when you're putting your motor back on, make sure red wire obviously goes to the red post, so don't mess that up. And black wire goes to the black post. Everyone knows that. Alright, putting the motor plate back on. Alright, fully connected. I'm going to plug a battery in really quick. Usually what I would do is before I even put the lower receiver back in the gearbox, I just put the grip on and then put the motor in, just to do a little test to make sure it actually still shoots. In this case it does, so we are good to go. Now we can put the buffer tube back on. Sling plate first. Sling plate first, and then buffer tube itself. Slide the wires through. Now the tricky part is putting the freaking screw down the buffer tube, which annoys me so much. So put it in your little spacer first, and then just drop her in. Get your long screwdriver, shove it down in there. Alright, finally. Got it back in. Now we are going to put the upper receiver back on. And then we should be good to go. Putting it back on, of course, pull the charging handle back to lift it over the nub from the beginning of the video. Push it in. You're going to have to give it a little bit of a push because sometimes it will... There we go. Sometimes it will try to pop out because the spring in the hop up. We'll push it back. Push the pin in. There we go. Screw the Allen key back in, which doesn't need to be too tight because it's already tight by itself. Just a little bit of extra protection. Keep it from falling out by itself. Put your stock back on. And there you go. Fully reassembled, functioning. I just tested it, works good. Hopefully this tutorial was helpful for all you new guys trying to take apart your guns, put them back together if you're having a problem. If I missed something in this and you have some other questions, I'll gladly help you guys out in the comment section down below. So of course, if you have any questions, let me know. Anything else, check out the description. I'll leave a link to this gun if you guys are familiar. If you guys are interested in the gun, this is the Lancer Tactical LT02. Shout out to Airsoft Megastore and Lancer Tactical for hooking me up with this. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this short little tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.